So just as a little overview, we are from Hub Energy. We are a startup. We are an aggregator. What that means is we aggregate different distributed resources across the city, the country, wherever, and create virtual power plants. And I'm going to get into virtual power plants now so that you understand what it means. And I'm very happy to take any questions, and I hope I can answer as many as possible. So we are a so I'm just going to put this away. So we are, as I said, I'm an aggregator, and we are working very hard to work with communities to really bring affordable, reliable, clean energy to everybody, everywhere. So it kind of, the motivation behind this was that for the last few years, when we started to ramp up green electricity and DER and solar panels and batteries, that seems to be always something for people with big pockets and not for everybody. And I believe, or we from Hub Energy believe, it should be for everybody. It doesn't matter how much you earn, and the business models are there, so that it doesn't really matter anymore that whether or not you can afford the costs of purchasing immediately all the necessary equipment that you need. So to get back into it, so what is a virtual power plant? That's probably the biggest question. So a VPP is created when a network of renewable generators and battery systems work together to generate, store, and trade energy, and that creates basically an income. So what that means is you basically create electricity, and if you don't need it and you have access, you can give it to someone else, and this other person can receive your electricity. And that's basically the underlying idea about it. So that's a very simple description, and I'm very happy to get into more detail. So how does it work? So participants, and this is the front of our school, by the way, so the one that we are working in at the moment. Participants allow the VPP operator to take over control of their battery. So if you were to have a battery, we can take over control, and we optimize selling and buying electricity dependent on wholesale market prices. So that basically means that the electricity, the battery could potentially be free for you because we are managing the revenue flow for you. So if there's a power shortage, the battery is discharged for a higher price while feeding cheap electricity into the battery when excess generation is in the market. So, and when we say cheap electricity, during the daytime, it could actually be negative, and that means we get paid to take electricity out of the grid. So, and because of these opportunities, there's an opportunity to make more money. But one of the most important parts that are now just arriving are all these additional income streams that we are creating, and this is the crux of it. We're designing new markets because batteries can participate in the, I would say, the healthy functioning of our grid. So because we have designed our grids in a way that only electricity should flow from one place, it's a coal-fired power station, to our homes. That was the original idea, and that's been overridden now by all these new different ways of solar coming in on this side and two-way market flows. We now have these we have some kind of, I wouldn't say instabilities, but you need more support for the grid to keep it working. So these are opportunities where a VPP can participate in. And the benefit here is, and the real important point here is to understand that you can't do it from a household level because you are too small. But if you join and you are at least 5 megawatt in size, you can participate in these grid supporting markets. So, and in order to get to 5 megawatts, you need to, find other friends, aggregate them, and then participate. So, and how do you do this? So you can participate, and then you can choose whether or not you want to outright own your distributed energy resources, or friend of mine, she calls it solar package. I like that, by the way, so I continue calling it solar package. So in that case, your electricity is free. You earn revenue by selling your excess electricity, but you have a very high upfront cost. Then the other option would be, and these are only very, I would say, high level examples, and there's a lot of gray zone in between. So the operator owns your solar package or DER and signs a contract with the participants. And in this case, you pay a reduced electricity bill and you don't have any setup and ownership maintenance costs. You're basically leasing the, it depends, you know, as I said, there could be a PPA, could be leasing, could be owning at the end, whatever you prefer. So there are lots of different gray zones in that. And then we have community batteries, and in my favorite ones, but unfortunately the way our regulations are set up right now, they are very difficult to implement without any additional funding from the government or any particular trials from the network operator. They're costing too much at the moment to, I would say, make them work, if that's a way to explain it. However, coming back to the question we were talking about earlier, that was about recycling and having better opportunities for batteries and sustainability. Community batteries could be potentially something like vanadium redox flow batteries. They're just larger, so they're not very good for, you know, household batteries, but they're larger and they are very sustainable. The vanadium is it's quite a sustainable material and it can be recycled. The batteries, they have a lifespan of 20 years and they can easily stay in operation for 25, 30 years. So they're a better, I would say from a larger battery perspective, they're the better choice from a sustainability perspective, but they're not as sexy as lithium ion right now. So they still have a bit of a, I don't know, like they're not as pretty, I suppose. So, and then here, this is our little school, Milton State School in Brisbane, the one we are working with at the moment. So the idea here is we have in Brisbane a program, I think that's similar to in other jurisdictions where the Queensland government decided to put solar on the school's roof to reduce their electricity costs. It's nowhere near to actually really make a big dent into the electricity usage, but at the same time, it's at least something. So the idea here is to put more solar on the roof, and the school is very happy to have that happening. And from there, put a small battery, and we can talk about the connection costs in a minute as well if there are any further questions. Put a small battery to the school and have excess electricity, and that can be matched. Battery is, I would say, depends on what you want. It's not immediately necessary to sell you electricity that comes from the school into the community. That can be just matched without a battery, but then you still have to use grid electricity during the evening. So you kind of, you know, you have to just make these choices. But we are very keen to have the battery and then have a couple of other batteries across the community and work with the community to add, to have our, you know, to be at least the minimum size. So there is we're quite lucky in our specific case. We can be 1 megawatt because we can participate in these EMO trials, but that's a different, you know, standpoint. So what it basically means, we are creating a revenue stream by selling the generation into the VPP community. So that's our Rosalie community here in Brisbane. We would manage the battery in conjunction with our partners, and the battery would maximize our battery value stack. So basically by that we mean playing in these kind of grid functions plus the energy charges. And then we ideally, so this is the idea, to work with other school parent committees and school advisory committees. That's what we're working with at the moment in Milton, but we wanted to roll out this as a cookie cutter across other schools. And I think that's where we then came also together with Susie, because the idea was, oh, well, if we're doing it in Brisbane, we can do it everywhere. So, and again, as I said, if you have these, if the size really matters, so the bigger you kind of create, the better the return for each participant will be. So if you have one community here and then you have the next one in different areas, you can link them again, and then you can play in these markets. So It sounds all very easy. It is just happening. So it's really just very, very new, and we're still all developing the necessary IT. So despite everybody talking about it as if it's happening for the last 20 years, it is just genuinely all very new. So, and just other examples that we are seeing everywhere. So Diamond Energy, one of the energy, the retailer we are working with. They have one particular one here in on the sunny coast. They are using their matching IT to sell the electricity from a solar farm that the Sunshine Coast Council bought into their needs at the council buildings and all of that. So this is quite neat. Then in Western Australia, they just rolled out a similar program. They spent $4 million to support virtual power plants in schools. And then I'm sure everybody heard about the Energy Locals and Tesla in South Australia. So they are looking at 1,000 households to generate and share electricity. That's very heavily subsidized by the South Australian government. And then here at Queensland, again, UQ had a battery installed. And as you can see here, they can try it into the market straight away. Part of this IMO plan, and they can participate in these specific markets, and they have actually underestimated what the return would be, and they believe that this entire project will pay itself in about 8 years. So as I said, if it's big enough, it definitely can pay for itself. So, and then the question is, what do schools and kindies have to do with VPP? So basically, what we defined was in a very simple manner is 4 steps to maximize revenue from solar and batteries. So first, install the battery. Second step, reduce electricity and network charges. This is a very important aspect. So we always talk about reducing electricity charges, but schools, at least here at the EQL network, but I'm pretty sure in many other networks as well, they are charged not like you and I on our electricity bill, where you have a fixed charge and then you have your variable charges, but schools are charged on a disaggregated network charge. So you can, if you reduce your usage from the grid, you immediately reduce your network charges as well. So if you put solar and batteries as a school onto your school, you reduce those charges. Then you participate in the VPP to pay back to decrease your payback period for your battery. And then the schools and kindies, as I said, get a revenue stream, and that ideally should be used for additional educational purposes. And I think there's something we should probably all push for, not that the government or the education department or whichever department keeps it. So that's something that needs to be put out, and I think we should all put our foot down. What are other community benefits? Because obviously the schools participate, but it can only work if we all work together in that sense. So obviously the participation provides a revenue stream for your school. You can participate without owning the solar, so you don't need to make the initial upfront cost, and you can connect. And I think this is something as well, everybody here started talking about it now. So you walk around and people talk about VPPs and what it is, and you just connect communities a little bit better. So it's a nice way of connecting the community, because I think it's not just the electricity that you're talking about. It is the wider conversation about sustainability, greener living, and how can you be a more, I would say, sustainable party or part of the society. So, and then in just general benefits include lower energy bills. It increases the grid stability, as I was talking before. You need to have the grid healthy and strong. You provide protection during outages, and you obviously support the Australian economy to a more renewable-based energy consumption. So, as I said before, I just wanted to reiterate. So what happens if I don't want to spend any money up front? Okay, choose one of the options where a third party owns the solar package. I'm sorry. and you get a reduced electricity bill, but you still pay electricity. And you can, in that way, you can still support your local school or kindy. And in case you feel really happy to purchase all or parts of the DER, so you don't have to pay all of it. As I said, there are many different gray zones as to how you want to participate. Your upfront costs are clearly higher, but you will pay less for your electricity bill, and you shouldn't look at it as you should look at it as a long-term investment, and that the investment itself obviously depends on as I said before, it depends on many different variables. So how much did you pay for it, how much electricity did you use, and so on and so on.